So, yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Remind podcast. I'm Dr. Ashleigh Moreland and I am joined by David Masterton, and we are coming hot off the back of an off-air, really heated chat, and this could not come at a better time. So
I'd say passionate.
So passionate.
Very
In the
passionate.
last couple of weeks, we have been focusing really heavily on communication and healthy communication, where we had 2 episodes ago was really focused on the instigator, the initiator of healthy communication. And then last week, we focused on being on the receiving end of dysfunctional or unhealthy communication and how can we actually raise the bar. And today, we're going to be focusing on the do-over or the redo. So when we hypothetically know how we want to show up, how we want to communicate in a healthy way, how we want to behave. And then the train leaves the station and we're gone, and it just completely, we just, vomit dysfunction everywhere. And then we realize and we go, oh, that kind of wasn't really the healthy version of that, was it?
Yeah, time out, do over.
Can we have a do-over? And the really cool thing is that Dave and I have just chatted for almost an hour. And I made a point at the end of going, I was like kind of going, okay. And I made a point, I'm like, this has been a waste of time. Because Dave loves me and he cares about me as a friend. And I had a situation in my life and Dave wanted to empower me by fixing it and giving me his perspective and his input and his experiences. But that's not what I needed. And so reflecting on that, it was a conversation at the end of going, wow, it's easy to talk about, isn't it? Not so easy to put into practice.
That's right. I mean, we could sit here, hit record, stare at a camera, look at each other while we're doing a podcast and talk about the theory of it.
Yeah.
But so the way we normally start these podcasts is we jump on and we go, how you going? Bit of a catch up from the last time we spoke. It's usually about a week.
Because we are legitimately friends, right? We did a podcast together.
Yes,
but
we're faking it
in our
so well.
Personal lives that friends chat about, that Dave and I chat about, because we were friends before we did a podcast together.
Exactly. And so Ash was dealing with a situation, which is not great, but it's not terrible. It's just one of those things, but it's something that I've experienced. That and a bit of caffeine in the system, more than I normally have, because I'm usually decaf latte with almond milk. And so I could be very passionate. The best of times, add caffeine and I'm off to the races. And quite interestingly, if we go back to the last 2 episodes, number 1, it was if you need to vent something, you need to ask permission. And then number 2 is that when you're receiving it, look at asking them what it is that they want. And I did absolutely neither of them. Because the language that I perceived in the conversation, something like, and these are probably the trigger words, it's like, at what point did I kind of decide I didn't need to ask for permission?
Yeah.
Or I didn't need to ask what you needed? It's because I heard the words, I'm not sure what to do. And these are just words, right? And it wasn't, David, what should I do? But by God, what did I hear? I'm not sure what to do, David.
What was that episode we did once on you hear that I didn't say?
Exactly. And so part of me was sort of like, you need to hear about my experience and I need to be your cheerleader because I really think you should do this.
Yeah.
Right? Fully primed, fully cocked, ready to go, bullet in the chamber, bang. And it's not sort of something where I came at it where it's something I needed to, I suppose, process myself. Like it was something I'd been processing for quite a while. Yeah, there's probably some relics of it in there, but sort of nothing else. But when I see it, and this might be me also walking into a doorway, head first, is that when I see it in others, it's really important for me to express that story to help them shed some light. What they do with it, it doesn't really matter. But it's important for me to tell the story. Now, whether that's still, part of the relic of the situation that's there, or whether it's sort of, just being encouragement, not sure. But in the end of it, it's really cool because we're actually doing a do-over now. As
Yes,
we're
we're
as
literally
we're
live in a do-over.
correct. And it's actually quite interesting to sort of see how that went, and to sort of, guys, when we talk about these things, we are talking about the theory of it. Are we susceptible to not following it or being caught up in everything else? Yes.
Yes, it's so funny because one of the situation that I shared with Dave, I didn't go into huge amounts of detail, but I shared in my Rise and Thrive group, my current group program, when it went down. And I shared, again, not all the details, but I shared about how the situation really brought up emotion in me. And I shared with them, what did I do with that? So I was like, this is what I'm feeling, and this is how I've processed the emotion, and this is how I've chosen to respond from a place of processed emotion instead of from a place of embodied emotion. And one of our participants actually commented and said, "Oh my gosh, my main takeaway from this is Ash is human." Like, she's a normal person with normal drama in her life and feels all the normal emotions. And it's so true, because when the situation that Dave and I was speaking about, I was kind of coming at it from the perspective of going, I'm so grateful that this happened, because what it showed me is the progress that I've made in actually feeling an emotion, being able to not just react in the moment, but taking time to process my emotions, to gather my thoughts, to come back into my body and to feel regulated again before responding. Another thing was, being able to have evidence of overcoming a story of having to do everything on my own now. Because as soon as this stuff happened, I just went straight to who can I lean on? And it was completely I felt pretty grounded in my body in doing that. And so this situation that happened was, from my perspective, was looking at going, oh my gosh, this is such a beautiful invitation for me to see how much I have grown and to see how far I have come. And yes, the situation still happens. So, and the bit where I said I don't know what to do about it was, okay, so it's happened, it's pointed to all these areas of growth, which is really awesome, but it kind of still needs something to happen for future direction, right? And I'm not sitting here tearing my hair out over it. I'm not losing sleep over it. It wasn't a problem that I don't know what I'm going to do about it yet. It's just that I haven't decided yet. I haven't responded for the future part yet. And that's where I think it's really interesting, is as soon as you saw, I don't know what to do, and that is an immediate, we got to fix it. Let's work.
Well, it was, I'm going to keep on coming back to it, a highly caffeinated cheerleader comes in and says,
Yes.
And also protection as well. The protective Dave wanted to sort of go, I saw in what you're telling me how cool it was, the experience, and you wouldn't have got this experience anywhere else. And then I go, but I've heard this experience a few times from you. This experience is great.
Different was my reactions.
Different. And then but then I've fast forwarded to, well, what happens next time and the next time? And I was getting very protective. Well, how do you stop it from happening the next time? And in my mind, it's like the vision of a samurai with a samurai sword just going, boundaries set, cord cut, sword back in sleeve, and then turn back and walk away, right? Which is how I would approach things in that way over time.
Yeah.
And I guess it's sort of like I needed to see you get to that point. And again, because it was more about, well, it was all about me. But to sort of go, hey, I really want this for you, because I want people, I want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And it's from a very protective, loving, and all of that. But you didn't need any of that. And none of the conversation actually said, this is what I need, but it's what I heard. It's what I
Yeah,
felt. It's what I felt that was needed. And
totally.
so, and it's just great to see how we can actually apply what we're doing into all of this, and to really sort of show, okay, theory is one thing, guys, but even if you know all the theory, do you get caught in the trap?
Yes. And the do-over is the perfect bridge. So the do-over is like, I don't know, let's say it's like the nappy. It's the backup plan.
Oh, okay.
We know that we want to pee
The
in
do-over
potty.
just catches the.
Let's call it the pull-up, right? Because when you get to a stage of potty training, you know that you want to pee in the toilet or in the
Yeah.
potty. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes you still have accidents.
Mm.
And so it doesn't mean to say you're never going to reach the point of being able to consistently pee in the toilet. It
Mm.
just means that you need this bridging support between the being completely dependent on nappies and being completely independent with the toilet. And so the purpose of a pull up is exactly that. It's about going, okay, well, that's the goal. And eventually I want to be there, but I'm not there yet. So
Mm.
let's have this backup plan just in case for those accidents, those mistakes, those mishaps. And I love the do over because that's exactly what it is. It's the pull up of communication, where
Mm.
sometimes we and poo on people from our mouth with our words. And I know this is getting gruesome. It's getting a bit weird.
Okay. All right.
I haven't had caffeine, all right. But the reason I love it is because it's kind of going, okay, I'm in this midpoint of going, I get it. I get what healthy communication is, and I want to communicate in a healthy way.
Mm.
I have the self awareness to observe that the way I just communicated wasn't that.
Mm.
How that just played out isn't how I wanted it to play out. And I recognize that in that, I actually didn't honor you, or I actually didn't do the things that I want to do that I recognize as healthy communication. So then once we recognize when a do-over is needed, like Dave, for you, how would you recognize a trigger, or how would it be obvious for you that a do-over is needed? If I hadn't have brought that to your attention today, would you have had any like awareness come to you over the next few days to go, oh, that didn't feel good for me? I wonder if
Well, I mean, the podcaster in me goes, yeah, sure, of course I would. I mean, we talk about this all the time. Of course. No worries. Don't know.
yeah.
What I can tell you is what I felt in the moment, which was, as we were talking, I'm like, I'm not actually practicing what we've spoken about in the last literally 2 weeks.
Did you have
Interesting.
awareness of that?
During the time, yeah. And then I
Yeah.
noticed that the body language from you is like, I'm kind of losing you. Maybe you're thinking I'm talking about something I'm not thinking about. We're not as necessarily in sync about this. Okay, maybe I'm losing it, as in we're not being productive. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But even then, it's sort of like I heard you out, and I just wanted to sort of just clarify what I was trying to do. But again, by that stage, we're still putting layers upon layers, which again was based on something which was, not needed. And then when you sort of said this is a waste of time, I'm like, okay, right,
That was like the
conversation done.
face,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah. It's like, okay, well, I'm not convincing anyone to do anything, and neither do you. And
Yeah.
then at that point, however you get there, right? It then comes down to, can you set aside ego?
Yeah.
Because it's still there. Doesn't matter if you have a skin suit, you have fucking ego. Doesn't matter, you call it ego death. Yes, it happens. The amount of control that the ego has over your conscious and subconscious, that dies. It
Yeah.
dies down to it, but you still have a sense of something, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, are you able to put down your ego? And more importantly, are you able to put down right and wrong?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because then
And
it's sort of like,
expectations and pride.
Yeah, because sort of like, hey, I was doing all this because you raised it. Hey, I was
Mhm.
doing all this because I care for you.
And
Hey,
I'm
I
just
was
trying to
doing all,
help.
and then you're calling this a waste of time. At that point, if you can just sort of go, oh yeah, because I mean, for me, the ego's not in control. It still yells from the back of the stadium. I can still
Mhm.
hear it,
Yeah.
but then it just quickly washes out, and you go, okay, you know what? And then you got the double hit. Well, we've just been talking about this for the last 2 weeks, and we haven't practiced it at all.
Yeah. How
And
cool is that?
so,
So for me, I recognize it when I reflect on something, go that conversation didn't feel good. So you know how you were
mm,
saying we were sort of mismatched, and you're right. As you were sharing the story that you shared, I kind of just sat back
mm,
and I was like, okay, I'm going to give you the space to get this out. I wasn't in sync with you energetically because I wasn't in it. I was kind of like,
mm,
all right, the train's left the station. You share, you get this out.
mm,
For me, when I've been that person where my train's left the station and I haven't shown up the way that, and I sort of go, oh, didn't feel super connected, or I didn't feel like you were picking up what I was putting down, or maybe
mm.
that, I don't know, maybe there was something not right there, and I have nothing else to go by, literally, than that didn't feel good for me. Did it feel good for you?
And you can tell when you're in sort of when you put the, I suppose, energetically, or even just visual clues or things like that, you can generally tell.
What are some signs that might suggest to someone that a conversation's not going how you want it to go? Like
Well,
for me,
like,
my husband,
yeah,
if
yeah,
the most biggest sign that we need a
posture.
do-over is when we start going at each other.
Mm,
That's a sign. If we are both not communicating in a healthy way and we start tit for tatting, or we start, you know, going at each other, or we start doing the he said, she said, or we start, they're signs. Like,
mm.
I'm looking for signs, because if that's not healthy communication and we're aiming for healthy communication, well then these are some signs that that conversation didn't really go as planned.
Yeah,
They're
actually,
signs that we might need a redo.
yeah, and I think just to add to that, when it starts from, if you have to look at patterning, right, for
Mm,
argument's sake, it's one justification from one person leads to a justification from another person,
yeah,
which then leads
and
to a
defense.
justification. And it's not, and it may not even be like justification can sneak in just in a very gentle and passive way. And then it can turn into defense. And then it can turn into the backs up. And then, oh no, but hang on, no, but, but it starts off with, actually, I'm not sure you're understanding what I'm saying. Then the other person says, well, actually, I think I do, but I think you did it. And then I go, well, actually, no, what are, and then like one or two justifications when you're
Mhm.
trying to, feel out what you're feeling, there's part of it, but when it becomes layered on top of each other and it becomes a bit more consistent,
Yeah.
then that's a sign.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's
It's
a but
huge.
but it's a gut feeling.
And also, if there, as soon as dysregulation's coming into the conversation, if you feel like you're speaking at each other instead
Mm.
of with each other, like I love the analogy you gave, Dave. Are we taking a stroll down a garden path together and exploring this? Or am I at you?
Well,
Because
when I was telling you the story, the whiteboard was down, the projector was on, and I had a stick pointing to the experiences.
yeah, that was so visual. So if we hypothetically were to practice this do over,
Mm,
what would that look like? So I guess we've covered, okay, so there's time. How do we know? What are the signs and symptoms, let's say,
mm.
to diagnose the need for a do over? So, how do we initiate it? What can we say? Well, here's some literal scripts. We could go, oh, you know what? I've been thinking about our conversation earlier. It didn't feel good for me. This is literally me. I'll say, it didn't feel good for me. I don't know if it did for you, but that's not how I want to show up.
Mm. I like that. I love that, what you're saying there, which is it didn't feel good for me. Did it feel good for you?
Yeah. And
That's the
then
one I love the most.
would you be open to trying again? Can we have a
Mm,
duo? Sometimes my husband literally just comes up to me all sheepish with his tail between his legs and goes, "Can we have a do-over?" And I'll go, "Of course."
mm,
Um, you know, going, I'd really love to revisit our last conversation because I don't think I expressed myself clearly and I didn't give you a chance to ask questions to, I don't know, gain clarity. Is there any chance you're open to having a second take at that conversation so that we can be on the same page?
mm,
Or just literally any communication that conveys how we did it last time wasn't how I'd ideally like it to go. Would you be open to trying again with me?
mm.
That's
And
ultimately what we're doing.
and the funny thing is, and really to be able to have that conversation when you're instigating it that way, it's perfect. Now, I'm putting myself in the position of someone who's just had a conversation with someone that does need a do over.
Mhm.
And if you were to ask me that right now, I would say I'm way too much in my masculine energy right now to actually do that. I'm in the right now in this time of space when it comes to caffeine load and everything. I just want to cheer you on. I'm going to be passionate. I'm going to be doing these things. So if you need that, David, he's on board right now. Let's go get done later. Yeah.
So that's
The
distorted masculine. That's not centered, grounded masculine. That's
correct.
distorted.
I would agree with that, but it's more like
Yeah.
the go get as opposed to the
Mhm.
masculine that can hold space.
Mhm.
Very very different. Exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, that's
And
huge.
so my response would be probably not now, but I really
Yeah.
do want to do it. Maybe I just need to be in a bit more. I need to be the other Dave, which I am, 50-50, that really sort of grounded, centered, unshakable, whatever it is. And I probably spend a lot of time in that at the moment, and
Mm.
probably need to be a bit more in my go get it kind of side. But also to be able to go, that's okay if I can't do it now
Yes,
because
and I love
our
that you say that because it's actually tying together these episodes perfectly and the skills we've spoken about, right? Because the whole purpose of a do-over is to recognize that the previous attempt at communication was unhealthy and now we would like to bring healthy communication.
hmm,
And so tying together the skills of healthy communication, we might go, "Hey, that conversation didn't go as planned. I'd really like to do a do over. Is now a good time, or do you want to let me know when it works for you to connect to try that again?" And see how. So there's permission, or does that feel good for you? There's
hmm,
permission. There's exploring together. There's being with each other in the communication instead of communicating at each other and having
hmm,
expectations and standards and all this sort of stuff. And so having the language to put around that is really valuable. And then, like you're saying, that now doesn't feel like the right time for the purpose of this conversation. Is it okay with you if I give our listeners an example of what that do over might have looked like?
hmm,
Yeah. So that might look like, yeah, of course, I really want that too. And so we'll go, okay, let's try again. So I say, I'm having this issue and I don't know what I'm going to do about it. I don't know what to do yet. And you go, oh, gee, that sounds tricky. Are you looking for solutions? Do you need to vent? What do you need right now? I go,
hmm,
nah, I'm all good. I know that it'll come to me. I'll pray on it. I'll sit on it for a while.
hmm,
I know that the solution will come to me. What do you want to talk about today? And it's completely different. It's done. It's over. It's gone.
That took 45 seconds as opposed to 45 minutes. Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm,
And so there's no pressure. There's
hmm.
no pressure. It's purely just a, hey, I'm here. I'm in this with you, my little my little props. Hey, it reminds me of Winnie the
Hmm.
Pooh. I feel like Winnie the Pooh stories do this really well. Like there's a big focus on this.
Yeah, it's been a while since I
And
watched any.
yeah, but it's kind of like me. I've got this thing. This is what's going on. I don't know what I'm going to do about it yet. And you're sitting here with me, and you're like, eh, what do you feel like you
Hmm.
need?
As I said in the past, which you referred to, it's like strolling through a garden as
Yeah.
opposed to moving 5 tons of wood. And I'm in
Yeah.
the moving 5 tons of wood kind of mode.
Yeah. And I love this is out of everything that we have spoken about, out of every strategy, out of every tool, technique, tip, hint, everything that we have
Mm,
ever spoken about, the do-over is my favorite thing. Because the do-over is the difference between being stuck in a pattern of dysfunction and having no way out and expecting perfection. And if it's not perfect, it's not good enough. And the bridge to we recognize that what we want is healthy and we recognize that there's a gap between where we are and what we want.
mm.
A do over is the bridge that helps us get there. It's my favorite thing.
And if I reflect on the past, because there was a point in time where there was a David of old that wouldn't even necessarily consider a do over
Mm,
because he was right,
yeah.
and or
Yeah. It
he was a
takes a level of
victim.
humility, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then when that David sort of faded away and gave birth to a David of do overs, um, boy, the do overs looked like, and I can look at this from hindsight. It's the do over is I'm prepared to talk about this again, or I'm prepared to talk about it again. Are you prepared to recognize you're wrong?
Oh, see, I would not encourage people to use that language.
No, but this is the
Well,
thing. No, but you
let
know how
me-
you start to learn how to do something, right? You don't
yeah.
just, and since we're talking about nappies, I'm not going to go into the nuckiness of that. But it's sort of like when you go from crawling to walking, right? You're gonna fall over. There's always that learning how to do
Yeah.
it do it
Yep.
do it properly. But I
Mhm.
found myself the idea of being open to do overs would be that I'm open to, like, I know I'm right. I want to have the conversation again to see if you're ready to recognize, and then from there, it then grew into, okay, I believe I may have been at fault. So the idea of a do over is I'd like to have a do over and I accept I could have done things better so long as you accept you could have done things better. So you kind of feel a
That's
progression
condition.
going on,
Yeah.
right? And then from there, it's sort of like, um, okay, let's have a do over. And I accept that I could have done things better. I would like you to recognize it, but you don't have to,
Mm.
right? But I would think more highly of you if you could recognize it.
Mhm.
Through to now, it's regardless of what or how I feel about the whole situation, I only reflect on my input to it.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I'm interested in is how I could be better and show up better, and how I can look at the other person and go, how could I have served you better in that situation,
Yes.
regardless about all of that. But there's a damn progression. There was a David
There
back there that
absolutely.
started off doing do overs. Are you prepared to recognize you're wrong now?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's where it started. Like, holy
Totally. And there's a rigidity around it. So what
yeah.
I saw there, as you described that, I saw a progression from closed-minded to open-minded. I saw a progression from fixed mindset to growth mindset, from closed heart to open heart,
Mm,
where initially, when we are so fixed on our idea, and I'm reminded of our episode on what are you fighting for? If we're
mm,
fighting to be right and to have our point validated, even if we do a do over, if we go in fighting for the same thing, we're going to have the same fight. So for me, the concept of a do over is to go, okay, what is healthy communication? For me, in healthy communication, I'm going to use my relationship as the example is did I feel seen and heard? And was I safe? Was I emotionally safe? And that's my standard. So if I'm fighting for us to be seen, heard, understood, witnessed, safe, how do we communicate then? What's the trajectory of that
mm,
conversation? There's going to be a lot more checking in on the other person. Like, how is that feeling for you? What do you need right now? Whereas if I'm going into that conversation to fight for my point being right and for me to win, It doesn't matter what's like it literally doesn't matter about them being heard, them being seen, them expressing what they're feeling. None of that
Mm,
begins to matter. So what I'm saying is what you feel and what you think doesn't matter to me. As long as I'm right, that's all that matters. And the evolution towards fighting for a healthy relationship that looks like you're important to me, you matter, what you feel matters. There's space here for all of you, even when it's irrational. Because there's things that I feel that are completely irrational. And if my
mm,
husband jumps in and says, well, you shouldn't feel like that because this and this and this and this, I feel completely unseen and unheard.
mm,
And then I'll shut down and then I'll go, well, I just won't even bother telling you then. What's the point?
mm,
Whereas if I express, I feel this, and he's in that with me, where there's space for me to feel, even if it's irrational, even if it's wrong, even if it's not true, he gets to go, oh, it must be really hard to feel that. What do you need from me? What do you
mm.
need right now? I go, oh, I actually just need a hug. I need you to tell me that it's a lie or that it's not true, or like literally, I don't know, I'm making this up, but it could be
Yeah,
anything.
whatever you feel in the moment.
Yeah,
It could
whatever
be
you feel in the moment.
just sit with
And
me. Can we talk about something else? Can we
yeah, I need you to tell
listen?
me what I should do.
Oh, now you're talking. All right.
David's just like, couldn't have
Strap yourself in, people. It's going to be a ride.
been. Oh, gosh. Yeah. And so, oh
Yeah.
my God, I would love to hear from our listeners. Like, how does this land for you? Have you ever witnessed it? Have you ever experienced it? Like, this for me is, it's an apology on steroids, because an apology can be very self-serving. An apology can be about, I feel bad, so if I say sorry, then I don't have to feel bad anymore. You have to
Or
forgive me.
and I know I'm coming from my perspective. If I say sorry, are you going to say it as well?
Yes. But what is the point of sorry without a commitment
Mm,
to showing up differently? And this is why I very rarely encourage couples to apologize, because apologize is nothing more than trying to appease shame in the other person. That's it.
Well, I think it's also a programmed response. Like, name
It
a
is.
kid that
Say
had the,
sorry.
yeah, it's sort of like, what do you do? And I even see it in myself. It's sort of like, okay, with my two kids, someone's hurt someone else's feelings. What do you think you need to do now? I need to say sorry. Good. That's a
Yeah,
correct answer, right?
exactly. I
Now,
never say this to my kids, and the reason is exactly that. I don't want you to say sorry and then continue your dysfunctional, crappy behavior next time.
well, it has to be followed through with. Like, there has to be a recognition of an apology, which I still think is important, because the ego doesn't like to say sorry. It never
Mm,
does. It will.
yep.
It will, if it's in its absolute prime, unless it fully knows it's wrong. It'll go, "I'm sorry," then insert justification here.
Mm,
Right? That's the only time an ego will say sorry.
yeah.
I'm right, but I'm sorry, but, or I'm sorry that you feel that way. So I think it's still important that there has
Oh,
to
that
be a
was my toxic
recognition.
trait.
Huh?
That was one of my toxic traits.
What's that? I'm
I'm
so,
sorry that you feel that way.
oh, it feels a cologne to be condescension by Ush.
Yes, totally. That's
But it's
hilarious.
it's it's still
So
very important.
crazy, isn't
It's
it? Sorry
I
in the absence of correction
useless.
is useless.
Yes.
And it drives me insane.
Well, actually, yeah. Sorry in the absence of the actual meaning is just a program response. It's sort of like fart
Mm,
in front of many people as you like, so long you got air freshener, right? But like, especially if you need to recognize it, and you also need to feel within yourself with the ego, am I saying it because it's just a program response, or do I actually mean it? And
mm.
can I just sort of say, I could look them in the eye and genuinely feel sorry as I'm saying it? Or am I saying sorry because it's just something that I need to do to move past it?
Yes,
Then
and
followed with correction. Like, the
yeah,
actual, it may happen again, but I hope to be more aware next time, and more aware to a point where it stops.
Yeah, totally. And I think a really important point in that is remorse. Feeling sorry is very different to saying sorry.
Mm,
And and this is why I think I have such a big focus on that didn't feel good for me,
mm,
which means I feel remorse about the way that I actually showed up.
mm,
I feel remorse about the role that I played in that unhealthy communication. And so for me, acknowledging that something didn't feel good for me and then asking, how did it feel for you?
mm,
And they go, yeah, it didn't feel good. I may not be saying sorry, but by acknowledging it didn't feel good and asking, can I have a do-over to
mm,
make an attempt at doing better? That's my sorry in action. And so when it comes to my kids, like if they, my kids are normal 7 and 10-year-olds. They snap at each other, they speak rudely to each other,
mm,
they fight, they do all the things. But it's what are those experiences affording us in terms of learning how to navigate them? And one is I won't ever just use the words say sorry to your sister, say sorry to your brother.
mm,
I will frame it as something like, in our home, we value kindness. Can you please try
mm,
that again?
mm,
And that is teaching a do over where they're going, oh, yeah, okay, that's not in alignment with the values that we have in our home and the way that we want to honor each other and communicate and speak to each other. And usually, without any prompting, they'll say, sorry. And so they're saying sorry because they'll reflect on it and they'll go,
mm,
oh, yeah. And then they'll communicate again in a healthier way. But they weren't born knowing this. No one,
mm,
I wasn't born knowing this. You weren't born knowing this. And for me, this was never modeled to me. This was not something where I just grew up knowing it because people did it. People did it. My whole entire life was just people projecting on other people's projections. That was it. And so I don't even know where I learned this. I honestly don't. I don't know if it just occurred to me one day or if I was taught it from somewhere or learned it somewhere along my practitioner training, but it was transformative.
but it
And
stuck. It
yeah,
resonated.
and it resonated, and by bringing this into my parenting, it excites me that my kids now have a frame of reference. And we were away last school holidays on a houseboat with a bunch of friends. There were 4 families, and my son accidentally, or something happened with a friend's iPad, and he had locked it out. Like he must have been trying to log into it or something and put the wrong PIN code in, got locked out for 15 minutes. Anyway, our friend whose iPad it was needed the iPad for work, and he got really stressed and really upset because he needed it then and there. And he
Mm,
was locked out of his own device. And I didn't yell at Elijah. I didn't get angry at him, but I sat with him and I said, I wonder how he was feeling.
mm,
And I wonder how you would respond to someone who's feeling that way. And that was all I said. I just left him. I left him to it. And later that evening, our friend came up to me and goes, mate, your kid has balls. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, in front of everyone. It's like he didn't even just pull him aside and have a quiet word to him. He literally approached him in front of all of the adults who were all sitting around, and in front of everyone said his, apology
mm,
/ do-over statement. And he took ownership of it.
mm,
And he empathized with what he would have been feeling, and he met him at that feeling and truly apologized. And that was such a cool moment to go, wow,
mm,
I didn't tell him what to say. It wasn't a scripted thing. It was purely just a coaching moment of going, I wonder what he might have been feeling, and I wonder what he might need to hear from you to know that you honor and respect him and that you're truly, you feel bad about what happened. It was so cool. But this is the stuff where we as parents and leaders and friends and family, we get to model that.
As human beings.
Mm.
Well, I think before we end the show, we should give our listeners what it's like to actually apologise and ask for a do-over. And so, Ash, I know I came into this conversation not probably being what you needed me to be, and probably added actually extra stuff for you to deal with. So for that, I am sorry.
Thank you.
I do want to commit, I will commit to having this do-over with you if you'll allow me. Not at the moment because I'm just buzzing. Because you're very special to me and I care about you and I love you and I want to protect you and all of those things. And I know next time that we have a chat about this, I'll practice a bit more about what I know as opposed to being all in my instinctual, what's the word I'm looking for? Instinctual patterning. So there it is.
Love it. I appreciate you, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I love that for everyone else. It doesn't have to be perfect, worded, scripted. It's just got to be sincere.
Yeah, you just got to mean it.
Intent matters so much more than content. It's the intent that matters.
It's not like it's going to be a well rehearsed Hollywood thing where the lines always come out perfectly unless you're Hugh Grant and it's all.
It gets easier as we practice it.
And that's the thing. It's just practicing it.
Yeah. So start practicing. And guys, we love supporting you on your journey. Please tell the algorithm that what we're doing is important. Give us a like, give us some comments, share it with people, because we really believe that if this stuff infiltrated homes, if this stuff infiltrated relationships and families, it would actually change the world in a really meaningful way. And so help us to help others. Help us to help others by sharing it, my husband actually said to me the other day that even when he's not at his phone, he's literally playing our episodes just so that it tells the algorithm that people are listening and watching. And I just was like, that is one of the most beautiful ways you could love us. Thank you.
And look, if you know people that just need to hear it, if you listen to an episode and you think, God, this person would love to hear it, what's the worst that could happen if you were to share it with them? It's sort of like, and I know that some people may sort of feel like, well, maybe if I send it to them, it makes them think that they're struggling or something like that. Maybe they might appreciate it,
Yeah. And again, it's whether you're sending it at someone or whether you're sharing it with someone. It's the exact same. So I send my husband content all the time around communication and parenting and all this kind of stuff. And I would love us to try this, not you should do this. But it's a with instead of at. So
or watch it with someone or talk about it with someone.
Who you share this with, to do life with and grow with and heal with. Can't wait to hear from you guys. See you next time.
Till next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.